Hey Hayley, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you, and hope you're okay. And we are going to be talking today about exercise and how it can be used to manage menopause symptoms. So, after this episode, we are hoping to bring in the benefits of exercise, of why do we need to do it, and in which way does it help control or manage menopause symptoms, and talking about the food side of things as well, in terms of what we should be eating to kind of complement or go alongside the exercise that we do. And that's where you're going to come in, Henry, as well. And by the end of it, we can discuss other top tips in terms of how you can be the perfect husband, helping your wife go through menopause and setting you apart, because it's really important. We hear this in clinic actually, and we do get asked for by men to go through and try and understand what their wives or partners are going through, because it is quite a transition for a female body, and there's a lot of information out there and there's a lot of noise out there in terms of what can help and what doesn't help. And I always say to the patients in clinic that if you could kind of put exercise into a tablet, it would be the biggest or the most sort of well sold drug, if you want to call it that, in the industry, because the benefits are huge and yeah, very, very little side effects, if any. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. So we know that currently, as we're talking right now, Henry, probably about 13 million people are going through either perimenopause or menopause. And I don't know how much you know about menopause symptoms, Henry, and I'm probably gonna scare you with some of them. And we're not going to go through them one by one, because there's approximately, do you want to have a guess about how many symptoms there might be of menopause? How many different
I'm
ones?
guessing it's gonna be. I'm guessing it's gonna be more than five, but maybe under 20. I actually don't know. I don't know.
Well,
The ones I think of, hot flushes. That's the one that comes to mind.
yeah, absolutely. So, in the research, there's anything between 34 and 66 different cited
Wow,
symptoms.
wow,
So, there
yeah.
are a lot.
Is this a pre-warning of what's to come?
Yeah, this is like, yeah. Yeah, pre-warning
Okay,
what's coming, and just
I have to get a list on the fridge.
get a list on the fridge and start ticking them off. But it's also really nice, I think, for men to understand, because then you don't just, the woman doesn't then feel like they're going crazy, and the man can
Mm,
understand that it's not his fault, because you do
okay,
hear, that husbands get a bit of a battering, or partners get a bit of a battering, because they just don't know how to do, what
deal
to
with it.
say,
Yeah,
how to help support the person going through it. And it's tough. And as we talk about it, you'll have a new understanding and a new appreciation as to why the body is doing what it's doing, and how
yeah,
it's not the lady's fault. And I think that's a good place to start, because we don't realize some of the impacts and things that are happening in our body as we go through the menopause. And if I wasn't a physio and I wasn't studying this and I wasn't in clinic helping patients with this on a day-to-day basis, I'd be oblivious. And it's quite scary, because for the first 10 years after entering into menopause, a lady's risk of heart disease is extremely high. So we know the effects of estrogen. So we know, I think we've mentioned this in the past, Henry, about estrogen is that hormone that depletes in menopause.
yeah.
And estrogen has all these nice protective effects in our body. And one of them is that it has a cardioprotective effect. So it protects our, sort of blood pressure systems and our cardiovascular system. But as that depletes, it leaves the lady a bit vulnerable. So it can cause arterial stiffening. And that's why ladies are more at risk of heart disease. And that's a bigger risk than even cancer risk at that particular age range. That tends to sometimes get a little bit more of the limelight, but it doesn't underestimate the importance of trying to tackle the cardiovascular system. And that's obviously something as simple as exercise, and doing different types of exercise can actually try and reduce your cardiovascular disease risk. And that's what we want to try and do. But that's a
Can I ask a really? Can I ask a really? It's probably a really dumb question. So I guess for me, with the menopause, obviously, it's not something I think about very often. Obviously, women in my life who have possibly gone through it, maybe I noticed something. I don't know. I mean, I guess my mum went through it at some point, but she probably didn't talk about it. But it's definitely something within work. Like we've had to do a bit of training around, you know, as people go through the menopause, etc. Is the menopause? It's not avoidable, is it? Like you have to go through it. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, so
Okay, fine.
every
Okay,
female will go through the menopause.
okay,
Um,
okay.
and some ladies might go through it earlier because they might have had surgery to, and that might have caused them to have go into sort of like a surgical related menopause, an early onset. But otherwise, yes, every female will go through the menopause, and even whales go through the menopause.
Oh wow. Well, okay. Okay. So it's well we'll have to come on to whale exercise on another podcast. Um and so is it more because you know it's coming that it's more about how do you manage that journey going through? And I guess I'm assuming it's different for everybody, but there's things that you can do to make sure that that journey is as you're ticking off as little of the side effect or the symptoms, or is it not as simple as that? I don't know.
Yeah, so every lady, so with the amount of cited side effects or side effects or symptoms of menopause, every lady will be different. Predominantly, I think it's about 75 to 80% of women will experience hot flushes or hot flashes, they're
Okay.
actually called.
Yeah.
So that is a predominant, well-known symptom. And then it can range from things like low libido, it can be issues with sort of bladder and pelvic health problems, so like incontinence, you kind of typical thing that people always think that ladies have stress incontinence after childbirth, as well as anxiety, depression. They might suffer with palpitations, all these kind of various organ system changes, but specifically to what's happening to the actual body from an exercise or muscle and bone and tendon and joint perspective. We've touched on previous episodes about bone density, and obviously that is a huge factor for menopausal ladies, but because that will be declining, the estrogen will be declining, and we know we have estrogen receptors in our bones, and we also have estrogen receptors in our muscles, and we have we deplete in things like vitamin D receptors in our muscles and bones, and even calcium as we go through as we go through the menopause. So there's lots happening, and on top of all of that, you're losing roughly, the statistics are something like 0.6% of muscle mass is lost per year after menopause. So menopause being a rough average age of 51. So every year you're going to lose 0.6% of your muscle mass. We know we've got different types of muscle fibers. We've got type 1 and we have type 2, and that's type 2 is actually divided into a further type 2A and type 2B muscle fibers. And the roles for those two different muscle fibers are different, from sort of slow contraction and low force, high force, that sort of thing. So whether you're doing weight training or a more endurance exercise, but it's really important that we try and hold on to our muscle mass because it is declining as we hit those ages. So the work we can do in perimenopause, which is the 10 years precursor, so the 10 years before a woman goes through menopause, is really important to be doing that work and putting the effort in now. And we here in clinic, there's a huge demand for ladies coming into clinic suffering with joint problems or musculoskeletal pain. So they're seeking physiotherapy because of that. And they might see things like shoulder pain is a common area of symptoms. So often ladies will start saying, my shoulders are just not very good, they're aching, I don't know what to do, I can't do the exercise I used to be able to do. They have a lot of lateral hip pain. So it gets termed different terminology, but we tend to call it gluteal tendinopathy in physio, and also greater trochanter pain syndrome. So it's all pain on the outside of the hip. So that's the common site of injuries. And we sort of see various things, from ladies feeling weaker, just generally, they just don't have the same muscle strength, or the force, they can't put the same force through the muscle. They might have more insertional or tendon related injuries as well, so that the body's more at risk of those types of injuries as well through menopause. So this is where exercise is so crucial,
Yes.
because we need to exercise and try and maintain our muscle mass,
Yeah.
because
So
obviously it's a
so have you
blood.
you see so you know that it's going to be reducing. So it's kind of like it's not like you can just stay still. Actually, you need to be keeping it either at a level, offsetting what you're losing, and then hopefully increasing. So I
Yeah,
guess it's even more important because you've gone over the top and now you're on a decline, so you've got to try harder. So it's more important. Gotcha.
yeah,
And then so is so if I get this right, that if you're pre-menopause, so you're at that 51 age, you want to be entering into it fighting fit. So you're kind of so knowing that you're going to be losing some mass. So do you kind of want to go into it like a bit more stacked than usual, knowing that you're going to see a decline on the back end, but at least you're not kind of. If I got that right?
yes, absolutely. Because we know for sure that if we do resistance exercise, you will improve your bone mineral density, so your bone density, by 1 to 2% every year if you maintain it. So there's definite benefits. The same with muscle. Muscle is so perfused by blood that our muscles stay as strong as we keep them. So there's no reason why we can't maintain, and we need that muscle strength to support our joints, and that's where that comes into it. But we have so many other benefits from just doing exercise in itself. So we know that by exercising during the menopause, you can actually reduce your incidence of hot flushes by 20 to 30%. So you can actually reduce them down. So a lot of people don't know how to control their hot flushes. Exercise is a proven tool that can help reduce them. And it's difficult because, ladies, there are barriers to why women might not want to exercise when they have hot flushes, because they already feel hot, or they worry that an exercise might make them go into a hot flush. But actually, the opposite is true. Exercise can actually really help suppress them, because the way that our body responds when we exercise. So it's all to do with how, when we exercise, we tap into our hypothalamus in our brain, into the pituitary systems, into lots of different systems that can help control and regulate all our bodily systems, our metabolic rates. It can also even help things like, when you're exercising, releasing things like serotonin, and actually reducing cortisol in your body, so stress. Because one of the biggest complaints that ladies will say is that when they hit menopause, they notice a laying down of fat around their middle. Like, it's, like everyone goes, oh, I get that kind of tie around my middle, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just,
The spare
you know,
tire. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how to get rid of it. And they feel really low about themselves because they can't shift it. And there is a reason why that happens, and that's because our body tries to store, as our body reduces and declines in estrogen, our body tries to store it in our fat cells, and it dumps it more around our middle. Um, the other problem is that our body will try and store fat more around our visceral organs as we go into menopause and through menopause. So this is where we need to be as healthy as we possibly can, as you mentioned, Henry. The better we are before it and maintain good habits, our healthy bit habits, the better we're going to be through it. But you probably can actually improve a lady's experience of the menopause. Everything's going to work better. And if ladies choose to take, HRT or not, we always say in
What's
physiotherapy,
HRT?
it's like
Is
the
that a
hormonal replacement therapy. So the kind of
okay?
patches, or they take medications, or it's a prescription, something the doctor will give a lady to try and give you that hormonal replacement. So it's basically topping up your estrogen to try
Okay.
and get you through the menopause. And there's lots of information out there, and obviously we can't advise on any prescriptive forms of HRT. However, we do get asked a lot about how it works, and what does it do. And also, a lot of ladies choose not to use HRT. They have been scared by some of the research, because it was associated at some point back in the history of time with its link to breast cancer, but that has been
Okay.
negated. And
Okay.
there are some benefits of taking HRT, but some ladies just choose that that's not the route they want to go down, and that's absolutely fine. And we come from this from a very much a exercise, and we're here to help you from a physio point of view. We're going to look after your muscles, we're going to look after your joints, bones, tendons, ligaments. We can help fix so many musculoskeletal injury and talk about the importance of why exercise is so good. So and it really does work. I mean, it's one of the most evidence-based things that you can do. There's so many options for what you could choose to do as exercise. So not everyone, you really want to fall in love with something that you enjoy doing. So I love Pilates. It's really good. I don't know if do you do any exercise, Henry? Do you do like an exercise regime or
Yeah,
anything at the moment?
no, I do exercise. I did used to do Pilates. I had a really bad back, so not the menopause, but and it was because I was doing too much office work and then aggressive gardening,
Oh,
not a
yes.
euphemism. On the weekend, basically, I was chopping a load of wood and I completely did my lower back in, and and I think it was just those extremes. So the physio I went to then recommended I did Pilates as a kind of ongoing thing, and that really helped. I don't go anymore because the class I went to stopped, and then they moved it to a time that I couldn't make it to. But it was really helpful. It was yeah. I'm not very flexible. I'm a bit like an oak tree, and so I think any kind of stretching is good for me. But back to your yeah with the so with the menopause. So there's no defined time, is there? Like it can come whenever, but is there like does it generally last like is it like a number of years or is it kind of like a 6 month thing or does it go on forever? I'm certainly asking this to kind of prepare myself, but what is there like a kind of average?
Yes. So the average age of onset of menopause is about 51. But that doesn't mean say that everyone's going to hit 51
No,
and
of
that's when your menopause is.
course.
If you're roughly sort of 45 and you're suffering with symptoms, some people ask their GPs for blood tests, but it's not always necessary. We say if you're 45 and you're suffering with some of the symptoms, that if you Google all the symptoms, you'll go, oh, I've got a few of those. It might be things like heavier periods or migraines or
Okay.
palpitations, those sorts of things. They'll say, well, just assume you're perimenopausal. But if you're really struggling, obviously you need to speak to your GP or a professional who's like a menopause doctor or something like that. But generally is signaled by a stopping of a woman's period. So that's what
So
menopause means.
that's the
She
sign.
stops bleeding. Yeah, she's stopped bleeding and the bleeding has stopped for 12 months. That is the duration of
Okay, so
time.
it's quite a long window. Now, would if you were using contraceptive like the pill, for example,
Mhm.
you might not know, or would there be obvious signs if you were
So
still
yeah,
using contraceptive?
if you're so what can happen is with perimenopausal or as you enter that phase of menopause, if you're thinking you're getting close to it, and some people choose to talk to maybe mums or grandparents and sort of roughly see if there's sort of any family history about how they coped and what symptoms they had during menopause. The other thing is that you can have periods of time with literally periods of time without periods or bleeding. Somebody might go 3 months and not have a period, and then all of a sudden they have one. That means that they haven't entered menopause because it hasn't stopped entirely. They have to have stopped for 12 months. But usually, ladies have decided to stop with contraceptive
For them,
protection around those times to kind of understand what the body's doing.
fine. Okay.
Some people don't. Some people use it because they might be on contraceptive medications for other reasons. They might be suffering with endometriosis or something that requires them. The doctors advise that they continue with them. They might be using other kinds of methods. So they might have got like the coil fitted or something like that. That's other forms. So not maybe a tablet form. So there's so many different variations as to what method of contraceptive a lady might be choosing to use. But yeah, around that sort of time, you are really going by symptoms and periods and bleeding, and
Okay.
that's what you're kind of defining as the menopause there. And obviously, like you asked before, that is a kind of system and a progress of symptoms that you're going to go through, because a woman has to go through the menopause. It's there
Yes.
to
And
basically
and no woman's
evolution.
going to go through this without noticing, are they? Like they're going to be aware.
Well, you do get the odd person or story, and you might hear about it. I've never come across anyone who said, "Well, I do hear sometimes, oh, I just sailed through the menopause and I had no problems at all." You do get that. You do hear about that. That's very lucky for them or for that particular person. The problem if another lady hears that is that they can feel quite bad about themselves if
Yeah,
they,
totally.
yeah, and it's not a
It
it is,
feels to me. Sorry.
yeah, go on, Henry, yeah, you.
It feels to me, my experience on the other end, obviously childbirth, and I know it's obviously very different, but still involves a lady. There's so many like different routes, and like, oh, ours was really easy, or or we prepared, or we didn't. There's all these different kind of options, and they ultimately have, hopefully a healthy baby at the end. But I guess the experience I got was there was so much. It felt like so much pressure of like, what is a good childbirth, or like what is the right way, and like this is the optimum. And I kind of saw it from my wife's point of view that she was, it was obviously occupying her entire body and mind for 9 months in the lead up, and it's like this massive thing. And I guess obviously we, she's not gone through the menopause yet, but I guess we've got that coming at some point in the future. And but the kind of what I've heard around, when I've heard people talking about the menopause, is like this big thing, and it's a bit of an unknown. And I guess I probably haven't sat down with my man friends whose wives have been through the menopause to kind of get some advice, but maybe I'll do that. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like there's pressure, and always like heightened aware. I don't know. But I guess if you can enter into it with a kind of a bit of a game plan, I don't know, or just be prepared for it, so that
Yeah,
you're giving
understand. I
yourself the
think
best chance.
one, yeah, I think you're right. I think they're all brilliant points, by the way, as well, Henry. Like, and it's really interesting the link you've made with reflecting back to the childbearing ages and
Mm.
the range of experiences. And it's exactly the same for a woman going through menopause. It will be very different from person to person. And I think the best thing you can do as a female, but also as a supporting and loving husband, is to
Of
have
course.
that yeah, of course, is to have that education and understanding. Because, like you say, if one lady sails through and another lady has a really difficult time, being there and understanding, and like you say, if you're talking to your man friends at the pub, and so and so says, "Oh, do you know what? My wife's fine. She's no problems at all," or "Oh, she just gets a bit hot every now and then you get another man who's really struggling because his wife is maybe suffering with some depression or anxiety,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
suffering with a multitude of symptoms, maybe not tolerating certain prescriptive medications or HRT or
yeah, yeah,
whatever, or maybe they are, or maybe they're on that, and the other lady maybe can't take HRT if there's a history of cancer, or it's a hormone fed cancer. Sometimes there's reasons why people can't have particular prescription types, or they might just be suffering. We haven't really touched on as a form of exercise is pelvic floor exercises, and people always just think it's for controlling leakage and that sort of thing. But actually, there's benefits for engaging your pelvic floor muscles, both for females and for males, for sort of sexual function. And that's a common problem that, again, isn't discussed, isn't talked about. You're not taught it at school. You're not. It's something that, as a couple, you might go through, and a lady can suffer with all kinds of various issues down there, which so they might struggle and not be very comfortable with
yeah, yeah,
going into any kind of intercourse and things. So having that understanding as a man that it's nothing wrong with you, it's nothing wrong with the woman, and talking about different what things need to change, and actually sort of looking at what products are out there that can help. But from what I love about physio is that pelvic floor exercises can help, and you know and not putting up with symptoms, and what kind of bladder habits do we need to look at. So that's something else that women's health physios will look at. bladder habits, looking at overactive bladders, looking at what can you do to keep yourself hydrated, making sure you're not causing irritation. There's a lot of things that women
Yes,
do where they use products to clean themselves, and actually any gynecological consultant or doctor will tell you you don't need to use anything to wash down there, which
fine. Yeah, yeah,
women do. So, so that could be causing them irritation. We hear it in clinic, ladies have suffered with cystitis, this sort of thing. And a lot of them are frightened. They feel like their husbands won't love them anymore
yeah, yeah.
because if they come back to them and say, "Look, I can't do anything," or I'm sore or whatever, and they just don't know what to do. So, it's
So
yeah,
we so
it's
so you need
an
to do some
understanding.
couples pelvic floor exercises.
Couples pelvic floor, because
Yeah.
men think that they don't need to do them.
No, no. Well, it's when you mentioned it, and the two. So I was straight away thinking because obviously we did this in Pilates. There was obviously a lot of engaging your core and
Crazy.
swinging the bucket and all that kind of stuff. And the class there was probably three men and mostly ladies in the class. And when you mentioned pelvic floor, I was thinking my wife would be thinking about. I don't know, I would assume she'd be thinking about leakage, and I'd be thinking about sex. But maybe that's just the way our brains work. But I guess if it's an exercise that you get benefit in both, then great. Two birds, one stone.
Absolutely, yeah, and they really are. Yeah. I mean, you could talk for a whole topic on pelvic floor and why it's helpful, but even things like we've talked about vitamin D from a bone density from the previous
Yes,
episodes about why that helps your bones. But actually, vitamin D, we know we need it for our muscles, and we also know that vitamin D is such a good vitamin because it can do about so many, it's responsible for so many different functions, probably about 500 different functions in the body. One of them being it can help with sexual function, which again, people don't think that they take vitamin D for that. And actually it's really good for that. And it's really beneficial for a lady to be thinking about their vitamin D levels through menopause, because vitamin D is responsible for protein synthesis, it's responsible for gene expression, it's responsible for muscle repair and growth, and it enhances the calcium that we absorb from our intestines and how we can take that into our body. So if we're low on vitamin D going into menopause and we're not sort of thinking about whether we need to supplement, and actually the recommendation is that all adults should be taking vitamin D from September onwards to
yes,
March. And it's a simple thing. It doesn't cost very much money. It's a safe vitamin to take. People need various levels. Sometimes if they're particularly borderline or low, and obviously blood tests can help you with that. Or if you're known to have been low in vitamin D, then obviously that would make a big impact. We know it's really important for our muscles. So we won't get the most out of the exercise we put in if we're running low on these kind of
yes,
levels. So yeah, really, really important that, and the benefit is that, we know the link with pelvic health, which
yes.
win-win.
Yeah, perfect. And with the vitamin D, obviously you can get that. Obviously, sunlight is the obvious one. Not
Mhm.
so sunny in the UK um, in the winter. So therefore, like you said, the benefit of taking the supplement is that, and I'm assuming you can also get vitamin D in your diet through certain
Yes.
foods.
Yeah, yeah. Like egg yolks, for example, have got vitamin D. But yeah, you can. Yeah, there's certain food types that will also help you. Even, and you want the vitamin D with your calcium as well. So it's sort of not just sort of vitamin D on its own. You need to think about how vitamins work together, and how calcium wants to be absorbed, and how even vitamin K, I think we've talked about that before. So vitamin K can
Yes,
help vitamin D get into your bones. You want your calcium because vitamin D and vitamin and calcium work together. So if they're in balance, then our muscles work better as well, because the two rely on each other. So that's just from a muscle perspective. So
yes,
otherwise, if you're sort of low in vitamin D and your calcium's not being well absorbed, you could suffer more with muscle cramps. And we do ladies will come into clinic and say, I'm getting more muscle cramps and aches and pains. And, they often will Google magnesium because that's quite a hype at the moment on social media. And yes, magnesium has a place, especially some of the muscle rubs, the magnesium creams and things can be quite good.
These that for is it sleeping? Is that what I've read? I heard someone saying that they take magnesium at night to sleep better.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be used for all sorts of things, really. Even, people who suffer with migraines can sometimes, yeah, take magnesium
And
and things like that. Well,
is
functions from
that
that.
due to and again what I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's less vitamin, not vitamin, magnesium in our foods because the quality of our soils aren't so healthy. Because from my baking point of view, we do a lot of organic bread, but also we sell a lot of conventional bread from conventional farmers. But there's this new movement around regenerative, which is kind of trying to like restore healthy soils again. So a lot of farming practices, for whatever reason, they put a lot of inputs in, whether that's fertilizers or pesticides or glyphosates, or also a whole mirage of things that you probably don't actually want to eat, and is sprayed all over our crops to increase yields and stop beetles and all sorts of stuff. And actually, but part of that is okay, not great to eat it, but also it's killing the soil. So then the soil becomes less healthy, and therefore it's got less nutrients to pull on. So then you get a less nutritious crop. So you might have, vegetables or fruits or wheat or whatever you're growing that look great and they taste all right, but actually they've got less nutrition. And but one of the ones I had heard was that there was less metals in the soil, but particularly the magnesium. I think I got that right. And so you needed to supplement it or potentially supplement it if you're not getting it in your diet. It's just one
Yes.
of the wonderful issues of modern food and what makes it so complicated.
Absolutely. And I think that's where it comes down to making sure you have a well balanced diet. So making
Yeah.
sure you're eating different food sources and food types and
Yes.
not trying to omit a particular food group because that can be detrimental to general health. So it's kind of, yeah, trying to source the best food you can if possible,
Yeah.
organic wherever possible sometimes, but that's not always possible for people. It might be a financial reason. You can be quite selective in the types of foods that you might choose to go sort of organic with and then who knows really when you buy them, are they? Sometimes my concern is, is it truly organic? Where
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
even come from? We try and grow some stuff ourselves, but again, you're relying on the soil that you either have in your garden or you're buying from peat-free compost, whatever you're using. But I think you can only go so far with it, can't you? You can only do what you can. So trying to take the control into your own hands within like exercise and the food types, and that's where we talked before about what types of food might be helpful during the menopause, and using
Yes.
whole grain foods and recipes
Yes.
and beans and lentils and pulses and whatever some protein sources in there. Yeah, all of that is really good, and that's where we can
Yeah.
bring
Yeah. Yeah.
your side in.
Well, yeah. Well, I had a think. Quite often it revolves around what do I want to eat for dinner, and I was trying to imagine, well, if I was approaching the menopause, what would be a good thing to,
Please
um,
do good.
and I think, yeah, 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 totally. Yeah, well, always preparing, but I guess. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, that kind of whole food diet, and again, I would always iterate, try and buy the best quality you can, and it can be difficult, and sometimes it is more expensive, but often when you buy whole foods, it does require more effort and more time to make it because it's not ready prepared, and so that might feel even harder. So that not only can I not just get something from the freezer or from a packet that I can just open up, I've now got to source it more carefully, and then I've got to cook it. It feels like a lot of effort, but actually, if alongside with exercise, actually, it's always trying to think like, okay, not only is it going to be delicious now, because obviously, I strongly believe that good ingredients cooked well taste nicer. They'll leave you more satisfied. But actually, longer term, if it's going to help you go through this period of life that, by what you're saying, is sounds like it could be quite difficult for the men and the ladies and the men. So like, actually, if we enter into this together, and we're at that bit before where you can make some changes or let's do some little things that can help, then that seems to me that seems smart. I don't know whether,
Yeah.
and of
Absolutely,
course, no one knows
absolutely.
what the future is going to hold, but at least you're giving yourself the best chance. And also, maybe it's that wake up call because I know I'm someone who needs, sometimes you just need that reminder, or whether it's going to the doctors or seeing a friend who's going through it, who's a bit older than you, and they doesn't look like they're having a great time. Be like, I don't want to be that person. Like that's not the future that I want. And we all of us can take, have that agency in our own lives to like do something about it. And it's and it doesn't have to be it all at one go. It can just be a little thing each day. But and I guess that's the name of the podcast, isn't it? It's like do a little bit,
Exactly.
and slowly they'll stack into
Yeah.
something impactful. So anyway, so on that, I was thinking about when you mentioned about the kind of the veggies and the beans and the legumes, and then also fish. And I guess like you'll hear a lot around the kind of the Mediterranean diet of like that's a really good diet, I guess, because it's got lots of veg, lots of beans, lots of fish, lots of good meats, olive oils, etc. And I guess when I think about holidays in the Med, it tends to be a kind of you get a good variety of stuff on your plate, so it's not just you know one thing or like a couple of things. Actually, there's a kind of an abundance, and so I guess kind of thinking about that and what could be a useful thing. So the food that I'd quite like for dinner would be and there's kind of two options. You can kind of play it either way. One would be like a really nice like hearty fish stew. So with that you could have lots of great veg at the base. There's courgettes in my garden are still growing in this kind of Indian summer we seem to be having. Uh, so yeah, lots of start make a base, lots of olive oil, get loads of garlic, onions, etc. A bit of chili maybe. Sweat that down, and I'd go more olive oil than you think. None of that kind of one spray cow stuff. We're talking a good couple of glugs. Get some good color onto it, good caramelization, and you could put some fennel seeds in or something, and then you could start adding your courgettes, your peppers. If you've got any tomatoes that you've grown, or just good old tin tomatoes work perfectly fine here, and start building up a really tasty base. Essentially, you could put some nice herbs, rosemary or thyme or something like that, some bay leaves, and then to this, so you could go two ways. One, you could go veggie, and you could add lots of beans. So at this point, you could add whether it's tins of chickpeas or cannellini beans, or even lentils would be nice, or a mixture. You can buy, like my wife often buys those kind of bean mixes from the health food shop, and then you just soak them, and you've got like seven beans all in one. And some of them are nicer than others, but you're getting variety, I guess, and it's a fairly cheap way of doing it.
And do you soak all of your beans, Henry, first,
Yeah,
or
yeah. Well, okay. So we always have canned beans in the fridge, not in the fridge, in the cupboard, because they're incredibly useful. If you like, quite often we live a fairly hectic life. Like kids are like shooting all over the place, and sometimes you're organized, sometimes you're not. So a can of beans is a great thing to have as like it just needs some filler, and it's going to be quite tasty. And actually they're fairly inexpensive. So we always have like cannellini, butter beans, chickpeas, etc. And there'll always be some, again, the like tins of tomatoes. They're just good staples. But then it's always like it's cheaper to buy like it's like a kilo bag, say, the dried ones, and then you just soak them yourself. So you just take out, a couple of scoops, and you soak them overnight. So really it needs kind of 12 hours in plenty of water, and then they just swell up, and then you cook them. And the key with cooking beans is that you want to cook them gently with no salt. So you mustn't add salt at the beginning, because it toughens the skin, and then you get really kind of like they never go fully tender, and an al dente bean is not very pleasant. Like you don't want it to be like mushy and horrible, but you don't want it to be al dente. I think you want it to just be cooked through. So you just season the last like 20 minutes. So once they're almost cooked, you just add some salt in, and then that will just they'll absorb that salt, and they'll be nice and tasty. And you can add some garlic and some herbs and stuff like bay leaves or thyme, etc. And depending on the bean, they might take 3 hours to cook. They might take an hour and a half, but they do take quite a long time. I actually use a pressure cooker, which kind of cuts the cooking time almost by a third, a half to a third, so much quicker. And maybe the threat that it might explode always adds a bit of jeopardy to the kitchen, but they're pretty good these days, so you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, so beans are a great thing, and then you just add them in, and then you just cook it really slowly. You could pop it in the oven and bake it if you want, or just let it stew. But again, I don't mind a bean stew, but I also really like fish. That'd be my preference, would be the fish one, a bit more premium. And I guess I just whatever fish you've got. So if you go to this, we've got a Morrison's in our local town, and actually they have quite a good selection of fish. We haven't got a fishmongers nearby. Um, and they've quite often got other stuff on offer. But you can get whitefish, you can get nice sea bream or sea bass, or they've quite often got prawns or mussels, just anything really. Just like get a selection as long as it's fresh. It's going to be fine. And then you've kind of got two options. You if you wanted to be like a bit chefy, you could pan fry them first just to get a bit color on them, and um and that would kind of heighten the they call it the Maillard reaction, which is, I think it was like a French chemist, but basically it's when you cook meats or proteins, the the outside start to caramelize and you get that coloration, but it kind of boosts the flavor. So it's why like a boiled steak versus a char grilled steak, the char grilled one tastes nicer because it's got that Maillard, and it's the essentially I think it's the sugars in the protein caramelize and taste nicer. So if you wanted to put that extra effort in, so personally I would put a frying pan to the side and brown off the fish just a little bit, just to get some color, and then pop it into the stew just to finish off. Probably if my wife was doing it, she would just put the fish straight into the pan because it's quicker, and it would still taste nice. You'd still get the same benefit. You just that little extra flavor.
And
And then to
do
finish
you
it,
cook?
oh sorry,
Sorry, Henry. Just on the fish point, do you cook your fish in a pan with butter or olive oil, or do you have a particular preference?
probably for this particular dish, I'd probably just go with olive oil. Yeah. I mean, it's probably a bit sacrilegious to cook in extra virgin olive oil. The coconut oil is quite a good fat for frying in. I guess with butter, you wouldn't want to go fully butter because it will burn. And so, like ghee, which is just clarified butter, where they've basically taken the buttermilk out, you can then fry with that. But I might finish it with butter, so I'd maybe start with oil and then and this is at this point, my wife would be like, "It's a Tuesday. Why are you using so much butter?" As I'm like throwing in knobs of butter and getting that lovely kind of frothy butter.
Well, this
And
is
that's more
the
like a kind of
cardiovascular. This is the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
cardiovascular
yeah, yeah,
amusement
yeah,
that
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
not to be using too much butter.
It does make it taste great. So yeah, that's how I would do it in a restaurant. Is you'd finish it with butter and then probably a squeeze of lemon or a little splash of sherry vinegar is wonderful. Like there's some it's just got a lovely. They basically make the vinegar, but it's held in a sherry barrel, and it's a slightly milder white wine flavor, and it just works really well with like fish or those kind of Mediterranean dishes. And there's some beautiful vinegars you can get there, but squeeze a lemon, perfect, just freshens it up. And then you add that into the stew, and then just I'd probably just turn the heat off, leave the lid on, and just let it just kind of relax in there. Just so then the fish cooks through, and then any juices come out, kind of seep in, and it's just perfectly done. And then I would just season it, finish it with some lemon, maybe a sprinkle of parsley, and then you just put that on the table. And then to serve with it, with the fish one, you could just go like a dollop of yogurt, nice bit of Greek yogurt protein, etc. But what would be really nice would be like a nice like a kind of caper salsa verde. So you can lots of garlic. So you chop up garlic, capers. You could add some gherkins if you wanted, but again, not all cornichons, not necessary. Lots of parsley, maybe a bit of tarragon if you've got it, or a bit of mint, but definitely parsley, and then lots of olive oil and a little bit of vinegar. And so you've got this really kind of pungent sauce. Oh, and some anchovies if you want.
That sounds
Um,
good.
so
Sounds really good.
it's very because it cuts through any kind of like if you've got this really rich stew and then you just got this really kind of sharp, refreshing kind of herby dressing. And the anchovies, I love the anchovies. My wife not a massive fan of them, so I'd probably put them on just I'd just have the anchovies on top for me because they've got that real kind of salty umami kind of
Yeah.
flavor bomb, and that would make the if you felt that the beanie stew was a bit underwhelming. Like you were like, oh, I could do with a bit of chorizo or like just a bit of extra flavor, but you wanted to keep it veggie. Actually, doing like a nice kind of salsa verde or something similar just gives you that real kind of boost of flavor that makes it delicious. And then and then if you wanted to go the full mile, you could make some like wholemeal flatbread chapati kind of things. And I think you've mentioned you made them where you just, like wholemeal flour, Greek yogurt, bit of salt and olive oil, mix it together to a kind of stiff dough, and then just you could like rest it for a bit, or just roll them out and then just cook them in a dry frying pan just for a few minutes each side, and you've got a really quick kind of wholemeal flatbread, which you can then just use for mopping up. And yeah, I mean that again, maybe for a Tuesday night that's too much effort, but But the nice thing with particularly with the beanie one, is you can make a big batch of it. Like with the fish one, you probably want to eat, if you've got mussels and stuff, you probably want to eat them that day and maybe the next day. You don't want to have that hanging around. But actually, the beanie one, again, you could make. It's quite easy to bulk that out, and then you could use it, as the base for something else the next day. You could, turn into a bit of a chili, or you could use it as a pasta sauce. You could kind of. I'm a big fan of, like, if you're making something tasty, make it bigger, something left over, and then you can spin it into something else. Actually, there was oh, no, I'm going on a tangent, but yeah, that would be it. And then you're ticking all the boxes. You've got, great fish. You've got good bit of plenty of different veggies. Get lots of courgettes, peppers, etc. in at the base. Yeah, try and I guess it's getting that diversity and number count up, and that's going to leave you feeling, hopefully after you've done all of your pelvic floor exercises and the other exercises, nutritious dinner to finish your day.
I was going to say, I think Henry, you'll be onto a winner if you can prepare your wife that meal, and you allow her time to go off and do Pilates or an exercise-based program. It's a win-win. Perfect husband. You already probably are a perfect husband.
Well,
But
I don't
the
know about that. I have to ask
the,
her.
the tasty food, and that kind of combination of ingredients that you've just mentioned, because a lot of foods, people don't always realize, but they have phytoestrogens in them, and polyphenols and all of these, which are very good for hormonal balance. So
Yes.
yeah, win-win. And if you can get that calcium in, and the vitamin D rich foods, and the vegetables and the fish and the pulses and beans and the Mediterranean
Yeah.
diet,
Yeah.
a win-win. Then that's what you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
do, and it's going to have that protective effect for the brain as well. So with the olive oil. So
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
that's a fantastic recipe, and I think as per other episodes, you have produced very kindly and very helpfully of a sheet with how to make those recipes, haven't you, as well,
Yeah,
Henry? Which
totally.
people can access through. Is it through a website
Yeah,
or?
yeah. So currently they're just on my feast website. So it's where host my supper club. So it's henryherbert.co.uk. It's got blogs and um, tickets for the supper club and stuff. But then I've put on a healthy bit section, and it's got the episodes, and then I just attach a downloadable that's got the recipes. And the one thing I would add is, I know that if I'd put that plate in front of my wife, she'd be like, "Where's the greens?" And so I'd, just some kale or spinach or chard on the side, and then you got the full package. Yeah, then you got a really happy wife.
You, a very happy wife.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah.
I was just going to
The
ask,
parsley is not enough. Yeah, yeah. I would consider the parsley enough, but that wouldn't. Yeah, yeah. She'd want more greens. So yeah, good to get.
and I was just going to add to I've heard, and this might be right or might be wrong, but you're supposed to cook fish low temperature. Is that right? You mustn't cook it too high, or is that wrong?
Well, no, yeah, well, so if you look, say you've got a piece of fish and you want to caramelize it, then you have to cook it at a high temperature, because to get that caramelization requires a high temperature. There's lots, like, fish requires a bit of thought. So it's quite, you can very easily overcook it and then destroy it.
Hmm.
And the nice thing with fish is it shows you when it's overcooked. So say take a piece of salmon, for example. It's probably the easiest one. Piece of salmon with a bit of skin on. You want to get it nice and crispy. Okay, so you've made your nice beanie stew and you're just going to serve it with a piece of salmon on top. You need a high heat to crisp up the skin. So the first thing you'll do is you want to make sure your skin's really dry. So quite often, if it comes from a packet, it'll have like some cling film over the top. You just need to take out the cling film and then just dry the skin with a bit of kitchen towel, just to get the moisture out. Because, of course, if you've got skin, moisture, hot pan, the first thing that's going to happen is the water's going to bubble and it's going to steam, and then you're not going to get that crisping. So you want to get rid of as much moisture as possible. And quite often, if I was cooking fish like to get crispy skin, I just take it out of the packet, dry it, put it on a plate, and just put it in the fridge for half an hour. Like, just because the fridge naturally is like it's like a dehumidifier, like it's always removing moisture, and that's why it has that little heater thing at the bottom, with the drip tray. So the fridge is naturally a dry environment, so it'll just help dry that skin out. Then you get your pan nice and hot. Now, whether you've got, I would always avoid non-stick pans, particularly the Teflon ones, because anyway, another episode. But if you've got like a cast iron or a stainless steel or one of those modern pans that isn't full of cancer, um, or chemical or toxics. Get the pan nice and hot, then in with your olive oil, and then you want to put your fish down, skin side down, and then obviously season it. Always season it first, and then you just want to hold it down either with a palette knife or like a plate, just something to kind of get as much contact of the skin onto the frying pan, and you just want to hold it there for about 20-30 seconds, and that just gets really good contact, so the heat is getting into the skin, and keep it high. Not like you don't want it smoking hot, but like a high to medium heat, and then cook that for about, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes. And what you can do is you can just watch the protein in the salmon start to get to the cook up. And once it gets all the way to the top, the salmon will then eject a load of white stuff, and that's basically the proteins in the
Oh,
in
that
the
is.
fish. I think the word is coagulating. So they get it basically like it just comes out. Now your fish is overcooked. Now, depending on my mother-in-law would be very happy. She likes her fish fully cooked through. I, however, would think it was a bit overcooked. So, what you, as a diligent chef about to feed your menopausal wife, trying to keep her healthy and happy, you want to just watch that fish really carefully, and it normally takes about, let's say, 3 minutes or so, 3 to 4 minutes, and when it's about three-quarters of the way through, very carefully with a palette knife, get underneath the fish, flip it over, because you want to get a bit of color on the other side, and then at this point you could turn the heat off or just turn it down low, and now this is the point when you could put a knob of butter, or you could put, if you wanted, or just a nice squeeze of lemon, and that will release any kind of like caramelized bits on the pan and bring them all up, and lovely flavor. The acidity will just kind of enrobe the fish, and it will just cook through for another 30 seconds, and then take it out, and you could put it just straight onto your dinner. And the fish will just need to rest for about 3-4 minutes. But normally by that point, you're like getting the knives and forks out, plating up or pouring a glass of wine, whatever you're doing. And you then should have nice crispy skin, and then which obviously the skin's got lots of collagen in, so that's good again. And then you should have that like cooked through. So when you cut it with a fork, it should just break apart, but it should be nice and like silky inside. Like it shouldn't feel kind of dry and fibrous. It should just be lovely and soft.
Away kind of
But
thing.
exactly. The wonderful thing about fish is there are like thousands of fish, and they all require slightly different cooking. But mostly it's like, for me, it'd be like get some good heat on it and then just cook it gently and just watch it carefully, because you can overcook it really quickly. But
I love
I
those
think
like
that,
special tips there, Henry, because like
yeah,
definitely get that white stuff that you mentioned on the fish, and I'm clearly overcooking the fish. And I never think to dry it. I mean, what a simple strategy that would
yeah,
make
yeah,
such a difference
yeah,
to just that taking it up a notch from. This is what I love
yeah,
about this, because you can that's what you want to eat, and I'm all for practical tips, as you can imagine. So I love that, and I love the fact that you can carefully watch it, time it, and flip it,
yes.
and yeah, and you won't overcook it, because you would think otherwise 4 minutes isn't enough
No,
time to
yeah,
cook
yeah,
the
yeah.
fish.
Well, it, yeah, fish is often recipes like overstate how long to cook things for. So some things they're massively under, but something like it was a brisket, they would like be like, oh, it only takes 3 hours, and it definitely takes 8 hours. And then like fish, oh, it takes 15 minutes in the oven. You're like, no, it doesn't. But then, of course, it depends on your pan, depends on your oven, depends how thick the fish is. So if you've got a piece of salmon this thick, it's going to take longer than the tail end that's wafer thin. So again, it's you have to use your noggin and
Yeah,
follow it.
exactly.
But
You
also,
don't want
you
to
know,
undercook it, but yeah, you sort of want to
no,
make
no,
sure. And I guess you would know if it's undercooked, Henry. What would be the apart from probably the obvious? Does it look
it'd just be raw.
more
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would just be, yeah, it'd just be a bit raw. I think there was a bit of a fashion. When I was younger, there was a method of cooking that I think they call it empalpier, where essentially it's like fish in a bag. So you make, I think maybe Jamie Oliver kind of made it a bit fashionable. So you get like your salmon or your cod or whatever, and then you put some herbs and a bit of veggies and stuff, and then you make but basically like a little
casserole?
duvet for it out of tinfoil and greaseproof, and then you pop it into the oven. That is really hard to get perfect, because you can't watch it. It's inside a bag that you can't see through, and everyone's ovens are different. Like you might have a really good fan oven. Mine might have the fan might be a bit broken. It might not. The oven might lie. It might say it's 200, actually it's 170. So like, and for me personally, would find that like a challenge to cook or tell you how to cook it because you'd have to just try it and be like, oh, actually, I thought it would take 8 minutes, but actually it took 20 minutes because I've got a rubbish oven. Or you might have a really good oven and I say it takes 20 minutes and actually it only takes 8 minutes. Whereas when you're doing something in a pan, or at least you can see it, you've got visual markers, you can at least check. Uh, and papilla is a lovely way to cook it because you get that lovely kind of steaming and whatnot. But it is, it's probably easier to either overcook or undercook it. What would normally happen is you'd undercook it, take it out, oh, it's raw, put it back in the oven, and then overcook it, and then
And then yeah, I
should
definitely
should have just fried it.
yeah, listening to you, Henry, I think I slightly overcooked the fish already, but I'm going to try all those things. I'm actually really excited to try and have a go with that.
Oh, perfect.
Um,
Well, there we go.
yeah, absolutely, and yeah, the variety of beans and the recipe. Looking forward to doing that, and the kind of dip thing that you talked about as well with the capers and everything. That
Yeah,
sounds
yeah,
delicious. So I'm going to give that a whirl. I think we can always make positive change, and I think any change
definitely.
is a good change. And I think yeah, anyone listening hopefully will try something that we've talked about today, and it's only
Yeah,
going to benefit their health. So yeah, so
yeah, yeah,
that's brilliant, Henry. Thank you for all that information. It's been an
yeah,
absolute pleasure talking to you, and I hope your wife will appreciate your new understanding of menopause. And yeah,
definitely.
she's going to be she'll hopefully sail through with you with your support. And I think it's really lovely to take you're going to take on board all that information too. So that's really good.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
Thanks,
yeah,
Haley. And I just want to say, just as a call out to the listeners, it's been really nice hearing some of the feedback from people kind of online who've listened to the healthy bit and, either message personally or message yourself. I think it's often, I really enjoy these chats and don't always think, oh, actually someone's going to listen to it, but it's encouraging to know people are enjoying it and getting more from it. And I guess it's that kind of cheesy one, isn't it? For us, like, please share it with your friends if you have value in it and do comment and also feedback is good because I guess we can kind of talk about anything really, can't we? And I'm a big believer in that we should, if people have got good suggestions, well, hey, let's throw it into the mix. I kind of feel like I'm on a journey and and doing chatting to you is really interesting. So yeah, thank you for feedback.
thank you, everyone. And absolutely, we're learning from each other, aren't we, Henry? Because we're interested in each other's areas of expertise, and that's why it all started. And we thought we'd do it just to learn from each other. And if anyone is listening and thinking that they're really picking up ideas, then yeah, that's what we aim to do, wasn't it? So fantastic. Thank you so much, and I'll look forward to chatting to you on the next episode, Henry.